You let me know when the recording starts, Dawn. Yeah. Thanks.
Recording in progress.
Borodar, everyone. My name is Councillor Cheryl Carlisle and I'm the Chair of the Finance and Resources Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Can I welcome everyone to the meeting, which is a multi-location meeting. Before I go into the usual spiel, we apparently have technical issues this morning, and if you're in the chamber, you have to use your headsets to hear what anybody online is saying. I'm told that the live stream is working okay and that members of the public can hear if they're watching. Okay, the meeting will be live streamed and recorded and will be available for viewing after the meeting. Should the live streaming fail, the meeting will continue and a recording will be available through the council's website following the conclusion of the meeting. Can I remind members that translation facilities are available, and for those attending remotely, to choose your language of choice. For those wishing to speak in the chamber, please raise your hand. For those attending remotely, please use the raised hand function. We will alternate between speakers in the chamber and remote attendees. For those attending remotely, please note that those in the chamber will be unable to use the chat facility. Committee members who are attending remotely are required to leave their camera on throughout the debate and when voting in order to maintain the integrity of the decision-making process. If you do need to leave the meeting temporarily, pop a message in the chat function so the Democratic Services Officer is aware, and then let us know when you return, please. Can I stress that I expect everyone present and participating in this meeting to conduct themselves appropriately and be respectful to each other. That applies to members, officers, and anyone in the public gallery. When I open up the debate to members, I will ask committee members to speak and put the questions first, followed by non-committee members. It would be helpful if members could ask all their questions in one go. Whilst I do not wish to stifle debate, can I remind members that any questions should be focused on the subject matter and to avoid repetition. If I feel that the length of individual speeches are negatively impacting on the overall time for discussion and becoming unmanageable, I'll defer to the committee's rules of procedure, which limit the length of speeches to 5 minutes. And can I also remind members that there's an exempt item on the agenda today and that you should be the only person in the room to hear any confidential and exempt items being discussed for those members at home. Before we start, I'd like to thank Councillor Chris for standing in for me at the last meeting, and I'd like to welcome Councillor Louise and Councillor Aaron to this committee, and thank Councillors Harry and Dilwyn for all their work on this committee previously. Start with item 1, apologies for absence. Sally, any apologies?
No apologies, Chair.
No apologies, lovely, thank you.
Chair, can I apologise for I'll have to leave by 12
Okay,
o'clock.
declarations of interest. Any declarations?
So, Chair, did you hear me?
I can now,
Okay.
Councillor Abdul.
Okay, I'll have to leave by 12 o'clock, so if I can apologise for that.
Okay, thank you, dear Councillor Abdul.
Chair.
And Councillor Frank.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I have to leave at 11:15. I'm sorry about that, but I've got to go to another meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Frank. It's really difficult trying to listen to members online and speak and hear yourself in your own ears, which is a bit off-putting, to put it mildly. Okay, declarations of interest. Have we any? No hands up. No. Okay. Item 3, urgent matters. I'm not aware of any urgent matters. Item 4, minutes to approve a correct record of the previous meetings. And pages 4 to 12, we've got the meeting of the 7th of October 24. Could I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Councillor Gareth. Any seconder? Councillor Sharon, thank you. If members would like to show. Any abstentions? No, thank you. Now we move on to pages 13 to 18, the meeting of 21st October. A proposer and a seconder, please. Councillor Nia, Councillor Sharon. Thank you. If everyone would like to show. Thank you. No one against. Okay, that's lovely. Item 5, minutes of the informal meeting of overview and scrutiny committee chairs and vice chairs, pages 19 to 23. That's the meeting of the 7th of October. Just an update from that for your information, in light of the Gwynedd safeguarding issue, chairs and vice chairs are writing to the safeguarding board to ask when the report will be coming, the North Wales wide report will be coming to scrutiny. So that's that. Could we have a proposer and a seconder, please? Oh, online, Councillor John online is proposing. Could someone second, please? Councillor Nia, diolch. And if we'd all like to show. Okay, thank you very much. Anyone against? Nope. Lovely. Item 6, minutes of the Conway Opportunities Board, pages 24 and 25. These were held on the 25th of October. Could I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Councillor Aaron, a seconder. Councillor Sean, if everyone would like to show, please. Anyone against? No. Those are carried, thank you. Item 7, questions to Cabinet members. They'll be relieved to know there are none. Item 8, to review the forward work programme, and Dawn Hughes, our Scrutiny and Committee Services Officer, is going to present this. Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you, Chair. I've only got one small amendment to the forward plan. So the Audit Wales action plan on the financial resilience was provisionally scheduled for the 2nd of December. However, Audit Wales have not issued their report yet, so this will need to be deferred until the new year. So that's my only update.
Thank you, Dawn. Have we got no comments? No one online? No. Okay. If members would like to, if we could have a proposal and a seconder with that. Councillor Gareth, Councillor Nia, if everyone would like to show. Thank you. You're all very obedient this morning. This is augurs well for the rest of the day. That's marvellous. Okay, we move on to item 9A, an update on the outcomes and outputs of the projects under the UK Government Shared Prosperity Fund, pages 60 to 89. Councillor Nigel Smith, Cabinet Member for a Sustainable Economy, is going to introduce, and Sarah Hobson, Funding Development and Governance Manager, is going to present the report. Councillor Nigel.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. First of all, I wish to thank Sarah Hobson for the update report on the outcomes and outputs of the projects under the UK Government Shared Prosperity Fund, which is here today for members' information. Timescales have been challenging to allocate the £24.5 million, and I wish to commend the funding team who have worked extremely hard to enable this within the programme requirements. The focus in Conway was to make a visible difference in our communities, supporting individuals and business throughout the county. The recommendations are on page 61, 2.1 and 2.2. So I'll now hand over to Sarah Hobson, our Funding, Development and Governance Manager, to take you through the report and answer any questions that you may have.
Dear Councillor Nigel. Sarah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, this is a second report on the UK SPF outputs and outcomes. Apologies, the slides shown are in English only, but we can share a Welsh version of the presentation. Next slide, please. So the aim of the Shared Prosperity Fund is to build pride in place and increase life chances, enabling a noticeable or visible difference in the places that we live, as well as supporting individuals and businesses and encouraging local pride in place. Thank you. The UK SPF allocation was 24.5 million, and the delivery timescales were tight and challenging, with the UK SPF award being confirmed to the North Wales Lead Local Authority in December 2022. The project approvals took place throughout 2023 and into early 2024. The original spend deadline for North Wales projects was December 2024, to enable the Lead Local Authority to close down the programme over 3 months. However, now where there's a justification, project extensions can and have been approved up to March 2025. The reasons for extensions can be due to unforeseen issues such as recruitment delays. Extension gives more time for projects to achieve their outputs and outcomes, and achieve additional outcomes. As members, you'll also be aware that we have our Conway Key Funds, and extensions for these projects run to a maximum of January 2025 to enable close down through to March 2025. UK Government have confirmed that the current UK SPF programme will end 31st of March 2025. Okay. As you're aware, during the autumn budget, there was an announcement that there will be UK SPF funding through transition year, financial year 25-26, in advance of any future wider funding reform from April 2026. At the moment, we have no further details on this transition funding at this time. I was going to say, possible to go back a couple of slides. Yes, yeah, thank you. I'd like to draw members' attention to a couple of things. The UK SPF outcomes and outputs are listed in Appendix A. These are set by UK Government, and the outputs and outcomes have UK Government definitions and minimum evidence requirements. Applicants to UK SPF had to include outputs and outcomes that they forecasted that projects will be able to achieve. As I'm sure many of your elected members know and are aware in relation to projects in your wards. Projects report and submit claims every 3 months. So they submit once every 3 months. This helps manage the workload of the regional team. So when this report was put together, some of the August outputs may not have hit the report in Appendix 1, as it's dependent on when the claim is processed. Thank you. So UK Government Shared Prosperity Funds outputs and outcomes are included in your report pack from page 67 on Appendix 1. Here we should note that UK SPF projects are continuing to deliver project outputs and outcomes, and they're reported on a quarterly basis. So the outputs and outcomes shown in Appendix 1 show further movement towards the target set since the last report was brought to FROSC in May of this year. And as of this time, projects are continuing to deliver and report more on outputs and outcomes. It's important to recognise that the full extent of delivery against these outputs and outcomes will be known once all the projects complete and the programme closes. And this will be reported to UK Government. The timescale for the final reporting is currently scheduled for March 2025. Thank you. So what does this mean for the projects that are listed in Appendix 2, 3 and 4? Under Community in Place, target outputs are listed on page 67. If we look at the long list of outputs, we can see that some have low or no achievements declared. So for example, green, blue space, this hasn't been claimed to date, but is imminent with projects across the county now completing and due to report. Examples of projects delivering against this output include the many playgrounds in Conway, Glogrific Gwydder in Llanrwst, and in Llysfine and Eggborough Garden. We also have number of facilities improved. This would be declared. This hasn't been declared at the time of this report. The only one is the Bethesda Rose all-weather pitch. So a number of facilities are due to report a facility improved, and this includes the Llanfairpwllgwyn Recreation Area as a facility improved, and the many community hall improvements as works are going on across the county in Conway, Ysbyty Ifan, Penmaenmawr Museum, the multi-element projects led by Friends of West Shore in Llandudno, and the paddling pools in Conway, which has been declared since this report was generated. We also have the number of tourism and culture and heritage assets improved. Currently there's 4 declared against a target of 20. These include the shelters on Llandudno Promenade, soon to be declared works to community libraries in Llanfairpwllgwyn, Cerrig-y-Drudion and Kemmel Bay. For projects such as these, the work takes time to complete. Contractors need to be commissioned in line with public procurement rules. The outputs can only be declared once the work is complete and finished. and there's evidence that needs to be gathered to support the claiming of this output. Another output is the number of projects successfully completed. Under Community in Place, an example of this is the Better Open Spaces CCTV project. It has a target of 16, and to date, 12 mobile cameras have been installed, and this has been declared and evidenced. But outcomes linked to this project, such as the improved perception of safety and the reduction in crimes reported, will take time to flow through, as the cameras will need to be installed and monitored for a period of time. So the outcomes linked to this have not yet been declared. Community in Place, you can see from the project list, include a diverse range of projects that are contributing to the outputs and outcomes. Can we go back one, sorry? Thanks. A large contributor to the outputs and outcomes are the key funds that were established during the summer of 2023. There are 4 key funds created, and I acknowledge as members you're familiar with the key funds yourselves, promoting the fund and supporting organisations that have secured UK SPF. So there's a community key fund, a voluntary sector key fund, people and skills, and business support. Under our community regeneration key fund that was led by Conwy County Borough Council, 70 projects have been awarded over 4.5 million in UK SPF grant. One of the outputs that will soon be reported on in relation to this, feasibility studies, as all are now approaching completion, yet none have been declared to date. So feasibility reports are being finalised, and these include the Rose Park for the Future, Pentref-Oilas, Llangwm and Nant Conway. We also have the voluntary sector capacity building key fund. So this was to support voluntary organisations across the county to develop. So there is training, training recently that's been undertaken is goal setting for volunteers and inclusivity in volunteering. In addition to this, grant funding has been awarded to 51 voluntary organisations of a value between 2,000 and 60,000 in UK SPF. So under the Conway Community Regeneration Key Fund, this map highlights the spread and benefits of the community focused projects across the county. I don't think it's a little small maybe to see here, but there's green diamonds that show where projects are delivering and are located, such as a suitable route in Llansalmon, which has improved access to a building that's used by the local community. The Minadon Park enhancements, which was led by Old Colwyn Residents Association as a neighbourhood improvement, along with Dogvelchi allotment. So the red triangles denote locations that are in a certain location but delivered for the wider benefit in Conway. So examples of these include the Creative Inclusion project delivered by TAPE Community Music and Film, and also the Learning Engagement Programme from Muston Gallery in Llandudno. And output-wise, these contribute to events and participatory programmes. And to date, 64 of a target of 72 have been achieved, alongside the main fund projects of Craig Conway and also the Rugby Gogledd Cymru, who have supported an output of a tournament, which is to do with the junior through to senior rugby teams competing for a cup. And we also have the Leisure Pathways to Pride and Place that's contributing to the output of number of local events and people reached. So the project offers different initiatives for the people in Conway to use the open space, including coastline, countryside, seas, lakes, playgrounds. The blue squares show the Town and Community Council Awards, and these include helping with beach access in Colwyn Bay, Llisfine undertaking a neighbourhood improvement of the installation of a new shelter at a Mugger area. So we just must note that the improvements will not be claimed until work's again completed and paid, and there's evidence of the fact the project's been delivered, for example, before and after photographs. The orange circles identify the projects that are Conway specific, such as the athletics track that was resurfaced in Colwyn Bay, with this being a team supported. Thank you. In relation to the people and skills outputs and outcomes, there is more progress on these because they are realised more early on as people are signed on to courses and things. But we do have people gaining qualifications or completing a course, and these will be claimed once a project or individuals have completed. So an example of this is Childcare Works. So the project provided online training and paid work experience placements in nurseries across the county. So the cohorts here, some of which are economically inactive individuals. So the training took a number of weeks and then the placements took 12 weeks. So this month, both groups have completed and received their certificates and many have secured employment opportunities. It's also important to note the difference between outputs and outcomes. So we have an output of number of people supported to gain employment as 400, which has been achieved just over 200 at the moment. And contributing towards this is the Work Well project led by RCS, supporting 81 individuals. The outcome linked to this is the number of people in employment following support. So to date, 96 have been achieved, and this includes 18 from the Work Well project and 61 through the Pathways to Employment project, which is providing sector-specific training as a pathway into a certain sector, for example, construction. A number of paid work experience opportunities have also been supported through UK SPF, including the Bryn Eyrin Nursery and Shop and Crest. There's a number of people that have been engaged in life skills. 304 have been achieved to date. This includes the Transforming Young Minds project, which provides young people with an insight into skills in STEM career pathways. And also activity has recently this month taken place on the Justice in a Day project, which was led by the Police and Crime Commissioners Trust. So they've run a secondary school Justice in a Day programme with Theatre Clued acting out a real life court scenario where school pupils gain an insight into the situation and implications of criminal activity. And a half-day session has been delivered in primary schools. We also have the Tourism Talent Pathfinder that's led by Group Llandrillo Menai, which has delivered a showcase event on tourism and hospitality in the county for secondary schools across Conway for pupils in years 10 and 11 with an interest in the hospitality and tourism industry. Thank you. So the local supporting business outputs and outcomes are shown on page 73 and 74. Decarbonisation plans under the Green Digital Project, which is led by Group Llandrillo Menai. Work is ongoing on these with businesses that takes place over a number of months before the plan is produced and claimed. So this is on target for achieving 40 of these. The Supporting Local Business Key Fund that's led by Conway County Borough Council will contribute heavily towards the enterprises receiving grants. So currently one is showing as reporting, but 60 awards have been made and will be declared once the businesses draw down those grants. We also have commercial buildings improved. So small grants have been awarded to improve buildings in town centres. 24 awards have been made to businesses in Conway town centres. And work is ongoing, and this output will be claimed once the work is complete. So it's likely that, and we anticipate that will exceed the target of 9 here. The number of people reached, so this is through social media and other initiatives. This target has been exceeded, and this is supported through Craig Conway initiatives such as Young Creatives and Town Teams, as well as future-proofing the visitor economy. Thank you. So this map shows the locations of businesses that have been awarded the Supporting Local Business Key Fund. So it shows that businesses throughout the county have benefited from UK SPF. Over 60 businesses have been awarded grants of over 2.7 million. So businesses have secured grants towards carbon reduction, energy efficiency measures, machinery that will improve their business efficiency, enable the businesses to diversify, and also in some cases employ more people to help support future productivity. So now the team's focus up to the end of March is delivery and supporting. So supporting the end delivery, supporting claims and project closure. There is an internal audit that's been undertaken currently on UK SPF, so we'll be working with that team, and we'll also be looking to what the transition funding will bring and require. Thank you. So the report recommendations, as Councillor Nigel referred to, are that members note the information, the progress and outputs and outcomes, and the final report on outputs and outcomes will be presented to a future FROSC. Thank you. If you have any project-specific questions, please do email me directly. Thank you.
Very much indeed for that, Sarah, and thank you also for the extra information you put in the report following our pre-meet. Really appreciate it. Just a quick mention to members, declarations of interest. I'm sure some of us are something to do with some of these community projects. Councillor Chris.
Yes, thanks, Chair.
Pop your mic on, please.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I certainly need to declare a personal interest in that. Whilst I'm involved in a number of groups that have benefited indirectly from some of the funding that's been allocated.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor.
I am chair of one of the groups that got one of the grants, so I declare an interest there.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Nia.
Yes, I'm involved in a couple of groups who have benefited from their grant as well.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Louise.
Open a can of worms here,
yeah.
Yes. Which will restore, revive, renew, kind of going.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Paul next.
Yeah, I'm involved with at least 2 groups that have received funding.
Okay, thank you. I'm involved with the Old Colin Environment Federation as well. So online we've got Councillor Anne with a hand up.
Yeah, just to confirm, I've got a personal interest in one of the grants as well in terms of Dugabochi.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Andrew.
Hi, yeah, we're catching up with the writing on this, the declarations. Yeah, personal interest in projects in Abergele. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely, thanks. And Councillor Charlie.
Also a personal interest in the same grants, Chair.
The same, okay. Anyone else with a confession? No? Okay, marvellous, thank you. Thank you very much. Right, we'll go on to questions, please. Let's have some questions. This very thorough report. First one, Councillor Louise.
Thank you for the detail on the report. It's really useful, and it's really exciting to see some of the money that's going into worthwhile projects. And I get the capital side of it. That's fantastic that we've been able to use either the county or friends groups, community groups, to invest in an asset that hopefully won't need investing in for quite some time. I suppose my concern, and I look towards the deputy leader as the connection through the government now in the UK, is what follows next. So understanding that transitional funding, we don't really know what that means, and what comes from April 26 onwards. So as you say, it's £900 million, but we don't know how that's going to be allocated, as in where and what are going to be the criteria for that funding, because a lot of the things that Conway have managed to get funding for are sort of, although they're non-statutory, they're the things that we should be doing anyway, for, like, you know, maintaining paddling pools, improving our bins, improving our car parks, improving our street furniture, and street pavement, sorry, and you know, the residents of Conway would presume that's just what we do, isn't it? So the worry is we've managed to sort of find this funding now to do sort of normal council stuff, and that needs to be looked at now as if this funding dries up because it's going to be allocated elsewhere or on specific items, is that we can't use that. You know, is this a one-off where we're using SPF funding to support stuff that really we should be able to support ourselves? So my concern is from April 26 onwards, particularly when we look at our capital budget, and things like all the things we're doing with sport, you know, fantastic. We've got Learn to Swim programme, £800,000. We've got a junior, promoting children junior sport, £1 million. If that money isn't there, that really concerns me, that the residents are going to get used to something and then it's going to be taken away. So it worries me about the future of how we sustain this, or whether we say, well, we could teach your kids to swim, but the young ones coming up, we haven't got any money to do that. So I suppose that's just the alarm bell going off in my head as we look towards 26, 27 budgets, capital and revenue. If we don't have this to backfill, we're going to be in trouble. But that's the negative side of it. Thinking positive, it's really good to see communities and friends groups coming together. As you know, I've worked with the one in Llandudno, and volunteers are really stepping up. Whether you think that's right or wrong, it doesn't really matter, does it? It's a fact that things are getting fixed and that we're helping out. I think it was called the Big Society by one politician, but it's long gone. So really great that we've got the detail here. But as I say, just flagging up. I don't think you don't know. You can't answer that question, but that's my concern. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll ask Councillor Nigel as the portfolio holder. Councillor Nigel, if you would like to start with that, please.
With the backfilling for projects.
Yeah.
Well, I think, I think Councillor has taken a bit of a dim view. These projects will support communities, towns, and our residents, improve their lives, and it's something that we should be very happy to have received. Funding going forward, whether it will be there or not, nobody knows at this time. But there's one thing for sure: the shared prosperity funding will leave a lasting legacy that will benefit the county. That is for sure.
Thank you, Councillor Nigel. Councillor Charlie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I really want to thank our officers. I think it's been a really beneficial scheme. Something we were really keen to do at the start was to ensure there was a good geographical spread, that we were helping businesses all across the local authority. And I think by looking at some of our smaller schemes and our key funds, we've been able to do this. And just, Louise, in reference to your question about the future moving forward, but we know how much is going to be allocated to Wales, but we have no certainty how much Conway's getting. We've no certainty about how we're going to be able to spend that, and that is a real concern. So we have a transitional year. My concern is officers will be dealing with closing the existing projects, and how do we then kind of proceed with projects for a year? You know how difficult it is to spend capital within a year, and some of the projects we supported were capital. So that will be challenging. So you're absolutely right to highlight that. And then it's what comes next is really important. The mood amongst other council leaders is that it's been really beneficial for councils to have access to these funds to be able to support some of the essential stuff that we've done. I think with some of the smaller projects have made a real difference for a relatively small amount of money. So how much money is Wales going to get? Who's going to control the spending, and what can we spend it on are going to be absolutely key. I know the team have put in an emergency meeting this Friday at 8:30 in the hope that we will have a bit more information then to actually see what we do over the next year. But it is a huge priority to actually know how we're going to, what we're going to have and how it's going to be delivered moving forward. So I agree with you essentially.
Thanks, Councillor Charlie. Councillor Emily wants to come in as well.
Yeah, just building on that, I entirely agree. It's always worrying with grant, isn't it? When you're using grant funding, you don't know when or where it's going to stop. But just to reassure you that conversations have already been going on with our MPs and further afield in order to try and get some clarity on this. Obviously, we are kind of sat in the element of an unknown at the minute until we know what the plans are going to be moving forward, but there is definitely a sense that everyone is recognising that these grants have been really beneficial, and there is definitely a sense between shared prosperity and levelling up that they're best done in Wales. So the lobbying is very much underway, and we're just waiting to hear what's going on. But as soon as obviously myself or Charlie knows anything, then we'll let you know. So.
Lovely deal, Councillor Emily. We've got online, we've got Councillors Anne, then Andrew, then Councillor Paul in the room. Councillor Anne.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I agree with Councillor Louise and Councillor Charlie. I think it is a real concern about the shortfall that is currently being covered by this UK Prosperity Fund, and therefore it's pleasing to hear, I think, Charlie say that there is a meeting that's potentially looking at that, because we tend to be pretty short-term sighted in this council, and I think our audit reports have pushed us to be more medium to long-term. So I think that is a significant sort of thing for us to be doing. In a really positive front, I'd like to join Charlie again in congratulating the team that was set up. I think they have been fantastic in terms of how they've supported, particularly at community level, the groups that are applying for funding. Locally here, we just can't fault them and are eternally grateful for everything they have done to support the team. When we do the final report, which is being referred to, can perhaps have a bit more detail and joined up working with CVSC, who've been involved in distributing and allocating part of the funds. I went to their annual conference, I think week before last, and they're really keen to get more and more involved with us. So I think in terms of the report, it would be good to have the completeness in terms of to see the bigger picture, including the work that they've been involved in doing. And then my final question really is, how will we market this to the community? Because some of these are pretty niche projects, as well as some of them being big pieces of work for Commie Council and indeed others. But how do we, I know the UK Prosperity Fund wants us to market it, whatever, but from a
Oh, Councillor Anne, could you turn your camera off? Try, your sound's just gone really bad there. Oh, you're frozen.
Yeah, do you want me to ask the final question again?
Yes, please, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. I mean, broadband is pretty poor at the minute. Yeah, my final question was, how will we market as a council all of the projects and all of the work that's been achieved? I think it is really important. Some of these things are sort of quite niche, but when you see them in a totality, it's quite a big bang for the taxpayers' buck. So how will we market is really my basic question, what we've delivered.
Who's going to take this, Sarah or Councillor Nigel? Councillor Nigel? No, Sarah. Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. We're looking at capturing case studies. So certainly when key fund projects close, there's going to be a case study that's going to be captured on each project. So that's something that will be able to be used to sort of promote the work that's been done. I think it's sort of at the moment capacity of the team. It would be nice to sort of do those things, but also we've got a short time scale to spend the money in. So it's definitely something that we're looking at doing. We've got an evaluation that's soon to be commissioned, so that will also provide us with sort of that insight and information really that will be able to be shared and communicated publicly. But yeah, it's definitely something that's on the list to do.
Thank you, Sarah. You happy, Councillor Anne?
Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. We've got 3 more speakers and we've only got 10 minutes left on this item. So we've got Councillor Andrew, then Councillor Paul and Councillor Abdul. Andrew.
Thanks, Chair. I'm going to just share something which probably illustrates what Councillor Anne was asking for. We actually had a public meeting and some of the local kids came down, wanted a push bike track, a cycle track in the park. We actually approached Community Key Fund and did the forms in earlier this year. They gave us a grant for £27,000, which meant that we could go on and do all our planning and all the things that you needed to do that. And consequently, on the back of that, and the help the officers gave us, and Mr. Johnson, who was project leader at the time, we've now got £360,000 worth of money towards the project. So that's a little example of what can come from a very simple meeting in Town Council with belief from the officers and to produce a funded track. And by the way, that money was going to go to either Mid or South Wales. The project failed there and it came back up to North Wales. So that's money that's from Sports Wales, and I thank them as well. So that's just an example, Chair. Thank you.
Brilliant. That's great news, Councillor Andrew. Thank you. Councillor Paul in the chamber.
Please speak, Chair. Yeah, I think this is really a good news story, and like everybody else, following on from Andrew, just commend the officers in the team in dealing with this, because frankly the bureaucracy in such a short time. Well, I do wonder about people's well-being in terms of frustrations in relation to all of that. But it's been they've worked through it, and they've worked through it with lots of different businesses, community groups, and whatever. And obviously, many of those are not, if I can put it this way, very sophisticated and find the bureaucracy challenging. So that's been a really positive thing. Also, hearing about there will be transition monies from UK government is again a good news story. My only concern is two issues. One is, please can we look to see whether the resources in this team going forward, because we've learned a lot over this year's activity. Can we look to see if the resources in that team are sufficient going forward? And the second issue, which does continue to concern me, is there are a range of people in Conways whose wages are either partly or fully funded at the moment from this fund. And at the moment, my best understanding is we can't give them really any advice or information going forward. And the consequence of that is inevitably those people, because they are on temporary contracts, they are actively pursuing, new recruitment opportunities to earn a living. So again, it is the messiness and the sort of riskiness of this funding. But I'd be grateful if there's any reassurance going forward that can be given in relation to those people.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. I'm not sure who's going to take. Councillor Charlie, are you going to come in with that one?
Again, it highlights the importance of us getting that information from UK government and then Welsh government as to what we're getting and how we'll be able to spend it, Paul. So it has been raised multiple times, and hopefully we'll have that detail soon, because I totally agree. We need to let people know as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Charlie.
Can I just
go
on the sort of resources within the team? Are we looking at if not just to sustain it, but going forward? Because this team, in terms of and the whole economic development, is absolutely vital, and I want to ensure that they've got the resources because they bring so much money into Conway.
Thanks, Paul. We've got Sarah Ecob online. Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, members will all be aware that we're stretched all over the place at the moment. The team, as several of you have mentioned today, have done an amazing job getting so much money out to so many disparate groups. And we're really grateful for your acknowledgement of that. I'm certainly very proud to be working with such a great team. We can always do more. We can always do more with more resources, and certainly when we are talking to funding bodies about money coming in, the core funding that's needed to deliver that is always something that is on the agenda. At the moment, the funding team, every single person that is within the funding team is focusing on shared prosperity funding. So we, where we've got other funding that might come forwards, that's a thing that we're looking at. How do we deal with that? Obviously, there's also large amounts of Welsh Government funding that we are chasing, and then external funding to that as well. So it's a good question. We could definitely do with more resource, but I think what the team are achieving at the moment is above and beyond where you might think they could achieve with a small team. So thank you for that question.
Thank you, Sarah. You content, Councillor Paul?
We'll see what happens in the budget working groups.
Oh, joy. Okay, thank you. We've got Councillor Abdul online, Councillor Gronway in the room, then Councillor Cathy, and then we are moving to the recommendations. Councillor Abdul.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I also join and congratulate the team for the achievement? I just one question for Sarah, if there's any balance left to spend before the 31st of March, and also to the deputy monitoring officers. We, as a council, either knowingly or unknowingly are involved in that. And do we all have to? It's like a council tax, isn't it? More or less, I think we all have to declare interest on that. So do we have to fill individual form or just declare interest and leave it at that, as it's not our personal interest? But can
Thanks,
I have
Councillor
advice from
Abdul.
monitoring
Kerry's going to
officer?
come in on that, and then
Thank
Sarah
you,
will
Chair.
answer the rest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Abdul, in relation to the individual members whose groups have benefited, I think you need to fill in the specifics of the interest that you have. But you are right in terms of if everybody is equally affected, then you wouldn't have a need to make that declaration. But if specific members have their organisation has benefited, then I think it's appropriate to declare a personal interest.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
Thanks, Kerry. Thank you. Sarah, if you'd like to answer the question, thank you.
Okay. In relation to sort of the balance, we're fully committed on our core UK SPF at this time, but obviously as we approach the end of the programme, things can change. So we've identified some projects that are scalable, that can receive additional grants should additional grant become available.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just make sure it doesn't go back. Thank you.
We will. Thank you, Diolch Abdul. Councillor Gromway.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me speak. Yes, I welcome the what's been achieved with this funding. I think it's fantastic what officers have managed, working with our partners as well to bring forward. But I'm concerned about this type of funding. We're going back to the days when I was very much involved in the European funding. The timeline that was given for this was extremely short. By the time that you put the administration and the guidelines in place, it was left with very little time for community groups and everybody else to put in their applications. So there is always a risk that by the funding people giving us these very short timelines that we spend on things that may just take us off the path that we'd intended going in the first place, and can have consequences when it comes to actually revenue implications of having attracted some of this grant funding. We're then left with the revenue implications going forward. But I certainly like to thank the officers. You know, it's a very small team we have there. I think it's partly because of the expertise they've built over the years that we managed to do so well in Conway. But it is a risk going forward that, you know, while we wait for the next round of funding, how do we keep that team in place going forward? So there's always a risk with this type of funding, and it's a shame that government chooses this mechanism of funding vital services in across the services. But thanks to the team for all their hard work.
Thank you, Councillor Gromway. I've got a question myself before we come into Councillor Cathy comes in. Page 82, the MENCAP grant, is this to provide the changing places facilities, or is it just a consultation? I wasn't quite clear on that. Thanks, Sarah.
With that project, it was the consultation to identify areas that could benefit from a changing place facility and explore the opportunities in order to put a changing place facility in Conway. Unfortunately, it's looking like they won't be able to deliver a changing place facility within the timescale. So that money will potentially be coming back in decommitted and be part of that.
So spent nearly 100,000 on a consultation, but not actually delivered the changing places.
No, it'll be proportionate. So it'll only be the amount that they've spent on their time actually undertaking the consultation work and the conversations they've had with organisations all over Conway around putting a changing place facility in. I think one of the concerns with it is that there's an ongoing maintenance requirement, an amount per year that needs to be paid to ensure that the that it meets standards. So that's been a little bit prohibitive in the discussions.
Yeah, that's a worrying one. Thank you for that, Sarah. Councillor Cathy, if you want to briefly come in, congratulations on your new role.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for letting me speak. I'm not a member of this committee. I was until recently CCBC rep to CVSC, and I wanted to pick up something that Councillor Anne said about closer working with CVSC which I think has been really important, supporting the absolutely brilliant work of Sarah and her colleagues. Having all that detail at your fingertips is so impressive. Thank you for the report. In terms of Councillor Paul's comments, recoms to the community, we organised in Penmamara a CVSC presentation at drop-in sessions at Penn Community Centre that drilled down to local community groups in a very clear and straightforward way. I'd like to thank Elgan and others from CVSC. And also a point of information, the chair of MIDIF is currently considering a request from Elgan to present the work of CVSC to members early next year. Thank you, Chair.
Oh dear, Councillor Cathy. Right, and oh, look at that, only we're spot on time, that's marvellous. Okay, could I have a proposer for the recommendations on page 61, that members note the content of the report for information on the progress of the outcome and outputs and the UK Shared Prosperity Fund programme in Conway. And 2.2, that a final outputs and outcomes report to be presented to this committee, and that's going to be May 25, so I'm sure we're all looking forward to that. So Councillor Chris has proposed. Oh, and Councillor Abdul online as second. Lovely. If members would all like to show. And online. Thank you. Anyone against? No, that's carried. Thank you very much, members, and thank you for all your work in the reports, everyone. Thank you. Okay, we now move on to item 10A, the revised capital programme 24-25 Q2 monitoring report. This is pages 90 to 106. Councillor Charlie, the leader and portfolio holder, is going to introduce, and Amanda Hughes, strategic director, finance and resources, is going to present the report. Thanks.
Okay, diolch, Gareth. Yeah, so in particular 1.2 members, the headline figure is that we're looking at amendments to increase the capital programme by £551,000. Appendix 1, which is on page 90, apologies, 94 would be the one, sets out the reasons behind that. So the sort of projects where we've had additional grant funding, those projects have dropped out for various reasons. If you look at the net additions, I guess it's quite pleasing to say that 2.466 million is additional grant funding. Required internal funding of 410k, and where that money comes from is detailed in the table. The last appendix, as you know, many of these projects are multi-year projects, so the last table sets out the actual in-year spend, which is at 11.127 million, Chair. But so yeah, quite a factual programme, not huge changes, but gives the reasons behind it to give members reassurance. So I will hand over to Amanda.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so this is the routine report that I present every quarter in terms of the progress on the capital report, and as Charlie just outlined, there have been a number of changes since the last quarter, totaling in net terms 551. 0.551 million. Just to clarify, I think from last time, you'll recall at the first quarter that I'd set out that effectively any underspent budget or remaining budget on a particular scheme that had existed at the end of 23-24 had been automatically carried forward, and what I have done, or what the teams have done in this next quarter, is review all of those detailed carry forwards, and we've gone through all of the individual projects with the services to make sure that any of those carry forwards, whether they were needed or not. So some of the adjustments that have been done this time are cleaning up effectively those carry forwards that came forward. It's a bit disconcerting, this microphone's going in and out. Anyway, so yeah, some of it's reflecting that cleaning up of those carry forwards, and I'd assured you that I would be doing that in this next quarter, and then also there's been some new grant awards and that kind of stuff. So yeah, so they're the changes. I think the only other thing that the report at this stage seeks to report on is the actual spend to date, which is £11 million of the total programme of 102 million. But recognising it doesn't sound a lot, 11 million out of 102, but recognising the point Charlie said really is that a number of these schemes, particularly some of the big coastal management projects, are obviously multi-year schemes. So it's not uncommon at this half-year point to have only spent what appears to be a comparatively lower level of funding. So happy to take any questions, but otherwise, hopefully, the report's fairly straightforward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions, members? Councillors Gareth, Paul, Louise. Councillor Gareth first.
Thanks ever so much for the report, Amanda. I've got 3 questions, and I'll run through them all in one go. I notice that we're not, which is good news in a way, we're not spending £50,000 on the under-20s rugby. So I was just wondered which came first. Are we not spending it because we're not getting any under-20s Six Nations games up in North Wales this year, or is it because, or are they not bringing the rugby up to North Wales because we haven't been able to allocate the 50,000 towards the costs? My second one is on the ash dieback scheme, which seems to, we've spent almost £200,000 on that. So I just wondered, is that the total cost of the ash dieback, and are we ahead of the game on the ash dieback? And how much income are we actually getting in from the sale of the wood? Because my understanding is it can be used for joinery, furniture, floorboards and things if we get to the trees quickly enough so we can generate an income off it. And my third question is, with the transport funds, yes, we're getting 90% contribution towards that, but we've got borrowing. We're going to have to take borrowing of over £2 million, which is going to affect our revenue. And I'm just wondering, can we honestly afford an extra borrowing of £2 million on stuff that I don't think is going to generate us any income? And as Scrutiny correctly pointed out a few minutes ago, we've got to be really careful where we take on projects which are actually going to affect our revenues going forward, or going to put some extra revenues in. So do we know how much the maintenance of the bridges and the walkways and the cycle paths that we're putting in, how much is that actually going to cost us every year in maintenance, inspection costs, upkeep and things like that? And, goes back to my original question. In today's economic climate, can we actually afford to take this free money, big chunk of free money? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gareth. I think Amanda can answer the first and the third, and we've got Geraint online to deal with the ash diebacks. Amanda, if you'd like to start with the first one, that'd be great.
Okay. I might also ask Geraint to help on the third one as well. In relation to the under-20 rugby, actually, sorry. The budget that I've removed is the budget that would erroneously been carried forward from 23-24 as an underspend, because in actual fact we had discussions with WIU about ceasing our contribution for that quite some time ago. So it isn't a recent decision. It's a historical decision that has just been caught up through the budget thing. So I don't, I'm not cited, I don't know whether Charlie is, about WIU's decision making, but I would say our decision preceded their decisions. But yeah, I can't talk otherwise about the WIU's decisions. In terms of the last one, the last question, and I'm sure Geraint would be able to help on this as well. I suspect at the end of the day, the view probably is that maintaining damaged infrastructure is just as costly as maintaining repaired or new infrastructure. So I guess whilst yes, no doubt, the some of the stuff that we're doing with that levelling up money and other major construction projects for that matter will have ongoing maintenance. The current infrastructure has ongoing maintenance as well, and I would imagine Geraint would argue that one merely replaces the other, but I'm sure he can perhaps add to that. He comes in on the ash dieback.
Thanks, Sam. Charlie, did you just want to come in on the rugby one before we go to Geraint for those two answers?
So the announcement by the WRU was made quite suddenly based on their financial situation. The events in areas by and large were well attended, and by and large they broke even. That money was set aside as a sort of underwriting fee, but I don't have the figures to hand, but it certainly wasn't. I don't think that was the prime factor in them not coming back. And they have said this will be a 1 year only decision. And they are hoping to come back again, and clearly we'd be very pleased to see them come back. But it was their own budgetary situation rather than any contribution or lack of contribution from Conwy, because that decision was made quite a long time ago from the old events budget used to be funded, which we don't really have anymore.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Charlie. Geraint, if you'd like to, we'll finish off with the vehicle, the second part, the maintenance part, and then we'll go back to the ash dieback. Thank you.
Okay, so the maintenance of the larger coastal schemes that we're receiving grant for, the cost of not maintaining them, I think Amanda's given you a very detailed response. The cost of maintaining them would exceed the cost of maintaining assets that have been renewed. With regard to using the wood for ash dieback, we are only taking down infected trees, and we can't use those infected trees. We can't sell that material for wood. We can't move it from site because it would present a biohazard risk.
Thank you, Geraint. Councillor Gareth, did you want? You looked quizzical there.
Yeah, well, I must admit, from my reading, I understood that you could actually use wood from ash dieback for joinery, floorboards, furniture is quite a sought after wood. There is a glut on the market because there's obviously a lot of ash dieback, but at the very least you'd think that you could use it for firewood and things like that. And on that point, I declare an interest. I've got a log burner. But I'm just thinking of ways of, it's significant cost, 200,000, and just making sure that, we are looking at ways of actually clawing some of that money back.
Thank you, Gareth. We'll take the log burner interests after. Geraint?
We only cut down those trees that are infected, and so we're not able to move that material. We're not cutting down healthy trees.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. We've got Councillor Paul and Councillor Louise.
Thank you for allowing me to speak, Chair. My question is just on the macro level at the moment, rather than the micro, because I'm assuming we'll deal with some of the micro in the budget working groups. What proportion of the 102 million capital programme are we?
Can't hear you, Chair.
Proactively stalling? And what I
Ask
mean
Paul
by
to
that
try
is
speaking to his
we're sort of
microphone.
acknowledging.
Speaking to your microphone.
We're acknowledging we're not sort of pressing ahead with at full speed at the moment, because of the potential revenue costs. I know we've taken some completely out, but are there projects within this capital programme of 102 which we're sort of holding back the reins on, if I can describe it like that? And then secondly, my question is, and this relates to the actual spend, are the projections going forward, these are for 6 months, so is it realistic to think by the end of the financial year will be in the region of 22 million or a bit more in relation to actual capital spend.
Thank you. In terms of the slowing, yeah, at the moment there's no instruction to any officers to slow delivery of capital programs. So effectively, given that it's all these projects have been through appropriate scrutiny, are in the program and are deemed to be important, then officers are progressing them at relevant pace. Obviously, you know, a different decision could be taken, but I guess to the extent that there's any pausing, it's probably been by not even putting them in the first place, i.e. we've only funded that which we believe we can actually afford. In terms of the profile of the likely spend, I don't have the detail in front of me, but we do work with the services to try and build up the profile of when the spend's likely to happen, because in reality we need that for other purposes. We need that to plan our borrowing, to plan our capital strategy, etc. So we will have a view. Hugh, I'm gonna look over to you in the hope that you might have some more detail about when you think the 102 million will be spent.
First hospital pass of the day. Come on, Hugh.
Well, obviously we won't spend 102 this year. I would imagine it's more like 40 million, something like that, but you can't tell really, can you? But maybe half of it.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Content, Councillor Paul. Okay. Fine, thank you. Next, we've got Councillor Louise.
Paul was macro, I'm going micro, just a couple of questions. The Venue Cymru, you got a grant for £200,000 grant to replace the LED lights, and obviously we're putting in 67,000. I just wanted to understand what it meant by 75% ACW and 25% theatre levy. That was just for my knowledge. And then secondly, I just want to compliment Leisure really. You noticed in the digital screen that's one of the going to go on the side of the swimming pool building, is that they asked for 35k and managed to fund it from increased income. So that, you know, I think that's should be commended really, that they're doing really well in Leisure. And I realise now why the pool was so cold, because the boiler wasn't working. So if I could just have a question on the what that means, the Venue Cymru, the £200,000 grant. Thank you.
Apologies, Councillor Louise. Could you just direct me to the relevant page?
Oh yeah, page 94 in just the appendix of the changes to the capital programme. So it's economy and culture, second one down. The scheme was going to cost 267,000, I presume, to make all the lights in the building more eco-friendly. And you've got a £200,000 grant from somewhere. There's ACW.
Is
Sarah still here?
Sarah's online.
Well, perhaps I can answer it. I think it's Arts Council Wales.
Ah, of course it is.
Yeah.
And a theatre levy, I just wanted to know what that meant.
Yeah, so what the theatre levy is that when for every ticket that is purchased, there is a theatre levy that's applied. I think Sarah might be able to confirm, but I think it's something like £1.50 or something on the top of every single ticket. And effectively, what happens with that is it, because it's a levy that's specifically applied and sold to the public, as it were, as in terms of upkeep of the theatre, the levy goes into a sinking fund, and then effectively that can be drawn on to support match funding and things like that of grants to do specific theatre development.
Thanks, Amanda. Has Sarah's gone, has she? Oh right, okay. Okay, well that's all the questions we've got, members, unless there's anybody else in the room that's got anything else. So the recommendations are on page 90. Could I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Councillor Hannah will propose and Councillor Neer will second. So, okay. Could you show in favour, please, members? Thank you. And against? No, can't see anyone. So that's carried. Thank you. Thank you very much, members. We now move on to item 10B, the the revenue budget 24-25 quarter 2 monitoring report pages 107 to 121. Councillor Charlie will again introduce and Amanda will take the heat. Go.
We'll share the heat. Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. So as you say, this report gives an update on our projected finance spend in the second quarter. I've previously voiced my frustration with the way we describe a budget. So we talk about setting a balanced budget for the year ahead. Many people misunderstand this in the terms they think it's a set envelope of money that we have to spend and we shouldn't be going over it. But clearly it's an estimate of what we need to deliver services that we're in many cases legally tasked to do. According to SIPFA, we have around 2,000 statutory duties. We know that the real pressure areas are around social care, both in our children looked after, domiciliary care and care home fees. And basically we have to supply that service regardless. So you will note in 3.2, the projected service pressure is 5.449 million. Amanda will go through the sort of reasons set out below, and we've got cabinet members and heads of service here, so no doubt members will have questions about those specific areas. But I would like to take you to 3.8. You know, it's really clear that we have to do absolutely everything we can to bring this gap down. Our reserves are as ever lower than we would like them to be. So any pressure that we put in those reserves again would be really detrimental for us moving forward. I would ask members to note that there's a huge amount of work going on in behind the scenes, both in terms of our procurement panel and our spend control panel. I'm really confident that will bring in results, but it does get harder and harder when you're making these cuts every year and you're trying to make savings every year. And you are essentially providing services which are demand-led. That does get incredibly difficult. So I will let Amanda go through the report properly, and then obviously we're available to take any questions. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Charlie. Amanda.
Thank you once again. Yeah, so this report obviously details the latest outturn forecast for the year. I'm making that even worse by listening to myself as well. Yeah, so as Charlie says, the position in the second quarter is that we're still unfortunately anticipating that we'll have expenditure in excess of our resources of 5.5 million. In Appendix 1, which is on page 114, starts on page 114. That sets out in detail the outturn, and just to draw members' attention to the changing format, which has been in place for a couple of quarters now, but just to help or remind members about that. So effectively, the first block of 5 columns effectively just shows the original budget moving to the current budget in column 3, the latest projection in column 4, and the variance as it stands in column 5. Columns 6, 7, and 8 effectively usefully show how it has moved from the previous quarter. So in actual fact, where it's actually showing now a marginal improvement from the first quarter, but what you can see in column 8 is that marginal improvement of 64,000 is actually made up of some more significant movements across individual services. So the individual service pressures are coming notably, I guess, from 3 primary places. One is home-to-school transport, which we know is an issue, and we've got continuing pressure in that area. Social care, the demand-led pressures, both in terms of children looked after and vulnerable people, and also actually now pressure this last quarter, increased pressure from demand in older people as well, is exacerbating the excess expenditure in that area. What I would, however, just note for social services in particular is, you know, we are, and it's been referenced before, but we are in negotiation with the health board about a number of care arrangements and ensuring that the health board pay for the health elements, but that at times is a little bit protracted, and so as a result of that, and as a result of other income as well, it is quite difficult at the half year stage to predict with certainty the income that we will get in relation to some of the costs we're incurring, and it to that extent, I feel and the accountants preparing the figures, working with social care, we're being prudent at this stage, because I don't want to have false promise of income that doesn't actually materialise. But equally, I recognise, and I guess I'm explaining for your information as well, that we may well get additional income, which would by the end of the year bring that pressure down. But at this stage, I can't guarantee that. So just to make that point. There are also service pressures in environment, roads and facilities, which at the moment that service is projected to be overspent by about £1 million. But as I've set out in the report, there are some one-off savings there's savings that have been built into the budget which aren't yet being achieved, that mean and that are fueling at least half of that overspend in ERF, and they relate to the fact that obviously we're still operating in Bodlondeb, whereas a part saving has come into the budget, and also the delay in the toilet closures that came through because of the general election and then the subsequent discussions that have taken place. So I'm confident that by the time we move into 25-26, obviously it's still subject to final decisions in terms of Bodlondeb, but that those savings will be achieved, and therefore half of that overspend position would go away. The other significant pressure that ERF are facing is in relation to costs of vehicle repair. You're aware through previous decisions about the capital budget that we have a pressure in the fact that actually our fleet has become aged, and as a result of that, that's increasing and causing us revenue implications because of the need to spend more on vehicle repair and also on hire of vehicles. But obviously there has been capital investment in that in the last year or so, which will hopefully come through, and I guess I'm also flagging that there will be a pressure in terms of the capital ask for 25-26 in relation to vehicles because of this revenue implication. And notwithstanding the need anyway to ensure our vehicles are fit for purpose. Those main overspending areas then, and I absolutely reiterate the point Charlie's making, that it's overspending which is actually expenditure in excess of our income sources, as opposed to overspending from any form of mismanagement in any way, shape or form. It's absolutely demand driven. But they have been offset in the net position from some predicted underspending in terms of economy and culture, and also various corporate budgets where that will offset. One thing I would, however, note, since I prepared this report, in this report I have forecast that I thought we would have a budget underspend against our interest payable budget by about £200,000. I'm less confident of that today than I was when I wrote this report a week ago, and the reason for that is because we have seen since the budget a reaction in the context that I think the forecast now for interest rates has leveled out more and is staying a bit higher than had been anticipated, notwithstanding there was a recent rate change. And the other thing that we're now experiencing is it's always the case that towards the end of the financial year the cost of short-term borrowing rises because I guess more and more people are after the limited money at a year-end position, and we normally see that spike in interest rates happening in January, February. Unfortunately, it started happening now. There's very little money in the market, and the local, the short-term movement of money around government effectively lending to itself has gone very tight, and actually we're now paying, despite the fact the base rate is 4.75, we're now having to pay about 5.5 towards 6% for short-term borrowing, and so that's a little bit higher than I was expecting a couple of weeks ago, and therefore I'm less confident now about that underspend on that particular budget. So just to make that point. Having said that, as Charlie's also identified, we are now working in a regime with robust spending controls. So all spend is going to a spend control panel or a procurement panel, and that is proving to ensure that there is consistency and a greater degree of scrutiny around some of our activities. So I think that will be positive. Just for assurance, actually, for members, the spend control panel and the procurement panel are not in any way, shape, or form rejecting lots of stuff. In fact, I think very little on one hand has probably been rejected, which actually demonstrates absolutely that officers, as you would expect, are only spending budgets on legitimate and important priority things in terms of delivering our services. So whilst the spend control panels are there and I think are proving to be beneficial, I do want to reassure members that it is only also proving that officers were doing the right thing all along, which is what you'd expect them to have been doing. So the other couple of things I just want to draw your attention to in terms of the last what's happened since the last report is we now have clarity on teachers and NJC pay. So the teachers' pay in the end was settled at 5.5%. We'd allowed 5% in the budget. Welsh Government had allowed 3.7% in their budget, and we have had indication that we will be getting some additional funding through in the current year to help fund that additional 0.5%. We haven't had the grant offer letters at this point in time, so I don't know how much we're going to get, and therefore I haven't accounted for that in here. So in that context, that will bring again that overspend down. But until I'm certain of what we're getting, I don't really want to account for it. But just to confirm that we are anticipating some additional income in that respect, which is good news. What I'm not clear of either is whether it would be baselined into the following year's budget, and again we await clarity on that. The NJC pay offer was also approved at the level of the pay offer, so that is £1,290 per scale point. It sort of filters slightly differently at higher grades, but in general terms, that's the level. That was actually sort of good news for us in the context that I'd actually budgeted for a little bit higher than that. I'd budgeted for an assumption of I think 1430. So actually there will be savings against that budget of around £300,000. And then the other pay deals are within budget. There's only a couple of other pay deals, and they're small by comparison. So I think the net position on pay sort of is looking sort of okay, but as I say, hopefully we'll be getting some additional funding anyway. The teachers' pension contribution, which went up this year, you'll remember that we budgeted on the assumption we would be getting income from Welsh Government in relation to that through UK Government. That's still the case, but again, still yet to be clarified in terms of what and how much, and I think we're still not anticipating getting clarification of that until sort of sometime maybe into the new year. So again, for the minute, I'm assuming it's that we're likely to have a shortfall of about £200,000 against the budgeted amount that we had. So time will tell on that. I think otherwise, you know, I just want to assure members that we're doing everything that we can to try and bring that overspend position down, because as I've said in the report, and as you're absolutely fully aware of, you know, we don't have those reserves to back up a significant overspend. The one bit of positive windfall news that we've had, I guess, is that there has been some refinancing of the North Wales Residual Waste Treatment Partnership. You'll recall that Conwy, along with 4 of the other North Wales authorities, so 5 in total, are part of this North Wales Residual Waste Treatment Partnership. And the original deal that was set up quite a few number of years ago has been the financing has been restructured by the current owners, which is Enfinium Park Adva Limited, and all of the partners have benefited from a share of that gain, and all of the partners have elected to take that gain as a lump sum payment. The alternative could have been to have taken it as a reduced gate fee going forward, but the view was for all the partners to take it in that way. So we have actually received 1.351 million being our share of that refinancing. I think you know, I would have hoped in an ideal world that we could have used that then to support our balances and or to support capital activity relevant to that area. But it may well be the case, subject to what happens for the rest of the year, that we may have to use that to reduce that overspend position. So probably that's all I've got to say as such, other than to obviously re-stress the fact that all officers are working to try and reduce the pressure as much as possible. But happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Amanda. I've got the first question, please. I took advantage to put my name down first. Have we budgeted for the impact on our domiciliary care providers that support the most vulnerable? Have we budgeted for the increase, the employers' national insurance increase? That's really worrying development recently. Have we got that in our budget?
The national insurance implication doesn't impact until 25-26, so it doesn't apply until the 1st of April. In terms of the decision, obviously, around next year's budget hasn't yet been taken, but we are certainly aware of the pressure. And when I bring the first report to I think to FROSC on the 2nd of December, I'll be outlining that. Certainly aware of the pressure. We're certainly looking at what the implication of that is. Certainly lobbying is going on both locally and nationally to make sure that Welsh Government understand what the pressure from care providers would be, and we will obviously have to consider that in terms of how it is built in to any fee deals, or not deals, not the right phrase, fee arrangements that we come to with our care providers. What I would, however, just caveat though, is that whilst I absolutely recognise that it's a pressure that we have to consider, equally it is not our job as a local authority to resolve private businesses' tax arrangements. So I just ever so slightly caveat it with that, notwithstanding I absolutely get the point that you're making.
Thanks, Amanda. Questions? Who wants questions? We've got online. We've got Councillor David.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. Just to follow on with what you're asking about for the domiciliary care agencies, I think the same is true for the residential and nursing homes. And as Amanda rightly said, it's not for us to be involved in private businesses, but then we also need to be mindful that if any of those homes under the pressures close, then this local authority will be liable for the residents of those homes, all the residents, not just the residents that we're actually funding, but all the residents. So I think we need to be mindful of that, and we need to keep those homes afloat. I think the settlement last year, I remember, was actually welcomed by the residential and nursing homes, but then again, we've now got the problems of this national insurance charge. So really, we have to be mindful of that. Going on to the broader picture, I think, as we discussed in previous meetings in the last few weeks, they're actually employing more people, but it's where we're employing people, and residents are very concerned that it's not frontline staff we're employing. We're employing more people in roles that don't actually, they're not actually frontline services or as a backup for frontline services. So I think we need to look at that, and we really need to look at the jobs, and I said this in the budget in February, we need to look at every job to make sure it's actually supplying a frontline service or is a backup to a frontline service. So I think we need to do that. On social services, yeah, I think there is a real problem with the children looked after and the increasing costs. And I think most local authorities in England and Wales are having the same problem, that there is extortionary. I think the costs have gone up something like 40%, particularly children that we send over into England, and it is pure profit. And I think hopefully the government will do something about that. But as I said, on the broader picture, the real question is, are we going to actually have a look at the people we employ? And as I said, are they providing frontline services we want, or are they more bureaucratic jobs? And I've said this quite a few times, in various meetings, but I think we're getting too bureaucratic, and a lot of these jobs now, are for people working from home, doing jobs that are not actually supplying a frontline service. And can we clamp down on that? Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of just going back to the points about care fees. I mean, obviously, any consideration that we make in terms of next year's budget around domiciliary care will also apply to residential and nursing care as well. So, but obviously there are debates to have for next year. In terms of children looked after, you'll be aware. That, well, two things. I mean, Welsh Government obviously have got the eliminate profit agenda. We as a council have been very proactive in terms of some of the developments that we've been doing over the last few years, which are coming to fruition now, like Bron and Ant, Button Silver Gardens, all projects that you'll be familiar with, where we're seeking to bring children looked after back into county and back into our direct care and provision, because of wanting to help in terms of that eliminate a profit agenda, but also improving the care and the outcomes for the children when we've got that direct intervention ourselves. So I think we are doing quite a lot, or seeking to do a lot in that area, and that'll be a benefit for all, hopefully. I guess, Councillor Carr, I'd perhaps push back a little teeny bit in the context of the view around staff. I think all staff that we have are either frontline staff or staff supporting frontline staff. I'm not aware of anyone who fits into a different category than those two. But the point, I guess, the wider point around, are we challenging every job? Then yeah, absolutely. Through the budget strategic working group, we've been discussing with services around what is statutory minimum and whatever, and they'll form part of the proposals coming forward, and I'm sure there'll be further work going on. But I would also, I guess, just make the point that we're moving into discussing next year's budget rather than the current year budget. But I just make those observations.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Now we've got Councillor Paul in the room, then Councillor Gareth.
Yeah, in response to both Charlie and Amanda's comments so far in their presentation, I don't think any of us find it very comfortable at the moment being caretakers or custodians of a broken system. And all the indications, even from Mark Drayford, the present Finance Minister for Welsh Government, are indicating that though we will get some additional funding this year, that it may be fairly modest in terms of our needs. And again, I remain concerned because of the formula and our falling population. Even if funds coming to us are modest, they may even be even more modest in Conway's case. I take full responsibility for the two budgets we've set and voted for both of those, including the £23 million of cuts and the 9.9 and 9.67 council tax increase, 9.67 council tax increases. You know, I'm responsible for that, but I am concerned that again, when we see a 5.449 million overspend at six months, that we continue, I think, to underestimate the financial demand for statutory services. And I know it's difficult to forecast that, but I think, again, going forward, we need to be even more strong, in a sense, estimating the full costs of this, because all the work that social services do, and lots of people get in very difficult circumstances a very good service, but we do end up with some of our most vulnerable people having to spend a great deal of money just to make them physically safe and have a roof over their head. And that, even with our new children's homes, is not going to stop. And that demand, in many ways, for my casework and what I see going on, is increasing that demand to meet those needs. So I think in the budget going forward, we need to acknowledge that we have consistently, in the last 2 years that I've been involved, we've underestimated the full impact of those costs. And then what we tend to do then is overestimate our effectiveness in implementing cuts. So that we say we're going to make this level of cuts, and then the reality is we struggle to do that. So we need to think about those two issues. Now, in terms of the fine detail, I raised some questions with Amanda when the report came out, and I'm particularly concerned about the £400,000 overspend on the school transport budget. And in paragraph 3.22, the projected outturn for home to school transport has also increased. And again, this is my point about we were trying to make savings in this area, but we're continuing to overspend 400,000 by mid-year. The paragraph goes on to say, however, further work is needed to obtain clarity on the position following the implementation of the new synergy system, and that work is currently underway. So how I interpret that, Amanda, is that we've got a new system in, trying to get a grip of these costs that are spiraling out of our control. So are we assuming that this new system may well tell us that the overspend is further going to increase between now and the end of the financial year?
Yeah, I guess what I'm indicating is that I'm less certain about the forecast on home to school transport, because some of the reporting information is still in development, effectively following the implementation of the new system. So what I'm saying is I don't we've prepared a detailed estimate as best we can at this stage. It might be finessed as we get better information as the reporting is improved.
But in a sense, that's my point on a number of areas. Don't we need, and I'm not being critical of you, Amanda, because I know you're absolutely on the same page with me about modernising our systems across the authority so that we are more efficient and effective in having a grip on our finances and managing them. But it is worrying, as I say, because I put my hands up and vote for a cut. But it's based in part on information which is, let me describe it as messy and incomplete. And that's my worry going forward. Unless we can get more accurate forecasting of going forward, but also ensure our own systems provide us the best hard data, then we're going to continue this process of, as soon as the first and second quarters of the next budget come through, we see significant variance. And that's what I worry about. If we don't do, we may have to invest more to transform now so that we can actually be managing not a broken system.
Yeah, I absolutely understand what you're saying, Councillor Paul, and agree with you totally. I think you know it's something that I've discussed. Gareth and I have discussed with the accountants around the fact that it concerns me, as you say, that we sometimes have this position where we appear to be saying we're going to be overspent at a mid-year position, and actually in the end it's not as significant. What and therefore how can we make sure that what we're saying is accurate throughout the year? No. What I would observe is so if you take last year, I think the mid-year position we were forecasting a similar overspend, and it came down to about 2 million, which obviously was a benefit. But of course, some of that then is because we have taken action. So on the mid-year position last year, members took a decision to take action in a particular way, and that obviously affected that change. So I would argue that it wasn't because it was wrong at the half-year point. It was because the action that was then taken brought it down. I do, however, agree with you totally about the need to be making sure that when you're making the decision around the budget, that we're clear around what's achievable and what's not. And so, for instance, I've already referenced earlier that we've already taken into the budget a part year saving as a result of closing this building when we haven't closed it. So clearly we were never going to achieve that. And I think we need to therefore make sure that we are not building into the budget those kind of things, which in the past, I guess, there might have been a little bit more headroom to absorb, but because budgets are getting tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter, the ability to absorb some of those things is harder. So I absolutely agree. And through the budget working groups, through our decision making in the budget, we can all make sure that we're robust in agreeing that something is achievable, etc. What I would observe on the other side, though, is I absolutely get your concern, and we do need to be making sure that we're building in pressure into the budget. However, there is a balance to be had there, because if we build in too much pressure just because it might happen, then there's a danger then that you'll make decisions around council tax, around other cuts, which may not have needed to have been taken because we've been too prudent in our decision making. So I think there is a real balance between not being too risky, clearly, and I guess you're arguing that maybe we were a little bit optimistic in terms of some of our pressures here. But equally, if you go the other way, then that has detrimental decisions attached to it as well. So it is about riding that balance through the middle of making sure we are realistically prudent, we understand the risks that we're building in, and we have a tolerance towards those. And I think that's a route we've got to navigate. But I absolutely take the general points you're making, and I absolutely agree with you. And we're doing everything we can to work with services to ensure that we can be reporting as well, as accurately as we can as we go through the year.
Can I just come back once more? Thank you. But you're not suggesting to us today, which is a surprise to me, with a sum of 5.449 million, prudent using your words, and robust, using your words. Action today.
Well, oh, sorry.
Councillor Charlie wants to come in, then Reen and Councillor Julie on this particular item, and then we'll go back to questions from committee members. Councillor Charlie.
So I'd entirely agree with what Amanda said about you're trying to find a middle ground here where you're not taking action. So for example, redundancies and stuff which subsequently you didn't need, shutting services you don't need. So it is an estimate. A lot of it is out of our control. We are being asked in the report to instruct budget holders to pause and slow expenditure that can be deferred for the time being. So, you know, we take that very seriously. The actual figure last year, this stage was 3.8 million. The year before that, it was 5.8 million at this stage. I think the 5.8 was the first time we had this pause and slow and see if we can bring this down. I think we've achieved that over the last couple of years and things have improved. I absolutely agree. It gets harder and harder every year. I think it's really important that we're here to look at what Conwy does in Conwy's budget, but the situation across, well, the whole of the UK, but certainly within Wales, the in-year pressure on social services across Wales is £115 million, because those are just estimating. Every council is under pressure with school budget, home to school transport. That's again rising, and a lot of that is out of our control. We took quite decisive action last year in terms of bring that down, but that it takes 12 months before we can introduce that, so that there's a time lag there. But I would be a lot more concerned if I'm seeing Conwy as an outlier in things, and we're not doing stuff that other people are, or we're suffering, you know, we're spending more money than we should in different areas, and that would ring an awful lot of alarm bells for me. But I don't see that. I think we have to recognise there is a national situation, challenges that we all face. But that said, you know, I absolutely would like member support for 2.3, that we do need to kind of try and slow spend down as we move to next year. But I guess if you're doing that every single year, you're probably going to see more money being spent in the start of the first financial year, and then it being slowing down towards the end of the year. So there's work to be done, but yeah, I totally recognise the size of the challenge, and it won't be easy as always.
Thanks, Councillor Charlie. Reen and then Julie, then we'll move back to questions. Reen.
Very, very quickly, because I'm aware that others will want to come in. But just in terms of, I think we need to look back as well about where we've been over the past 2 years, and it's not just around council tax increases. It's about service reduction and budget reduction. And you're looking at the levels of, you know, 12 million last year, 10 million the year before. So we've never seen anything like that previously in local government. The level of budget reductions we're looking at there are unprecedented. So I think we have to have that context. And as a result of that, the work that's been going on with SIPA, the spend controls that have been put in, the procurement board that's been put in, all these are aligned to try and control spend in year. Now, as Amanda quite rightly says, pressure through the front door is incredibly difficult. You cannot control that. And the figures before you today probably reflect where we are there in terms of exactly what you're saying, Paul, around that. But I would make the point, and going back to Councillor Carr's point, you know, the pressure on staff has been incredible over the past 2 years. You know, we cannot underplay that. And I don't want to rehash the discussion we had last month, but clearly this is having a significant effect on the way that we operate. And I would push back, as Amanda did, on the assumption that, you know, that not all jobs are important. We do work here across services to try and deliver for the residents. That's the priority always. But I back to what your point was, Councillor Paul, I cannot disagree. You know, the data is incredibly important, that you get accurate, up-to-date information so that you make educated decisions, especially around setting the budget. And hopefully, I'm very confident that we're in a much better place than we were 2 years ago, clearly, you know, and also, you know, the work with the new finance system that will enable us to add bits onto that. But clearly there are bits that we need to work on still. You know, this is a journey for us, isn't it? Let's be honest. But I cannot disagree with the points you're making, Councillor Paul.
Thank you, Reen. Councillor Julie, briefly, if you want to just come in.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I echo what's been said, really, and just for some clarity for Paul. So, in terms of the new synergy system, I guess much like our new system, finance system that we have in Conway, it will take a little bit of time to embed in, but this was procured across the six, jointly across the six North Wales local authorities, and it will give us an opportunity to be more robust in monitoring home school transport. It's just like the finance system we have in the local authority. It's around capacity to make sure we bed in and we get the opportunity to use it to the best of its ability. But yeah, and just to carry on, Amanda and I met with a school the other day. I won't go into detail about that, but it was clear that there's information that goes out to schools with our finance system, and it takes time to streamline that and make it so that that information is appropriate. I don't know if that's the right word, but that it's information that's relevant and can be used by the school in a positive way to ensure that they are making, whether it's savings or making the best decisions that they can with the information that they have. And I think it will be the same for us with this as we move forward, and the other six local authorities learn from it around home to school transport. And then also just to say, it is a national issue, as Charlie has just said, in terms of home to school transport. I was on with the Minister last week. She is going to have a meeting with the Minister for Transport, because the home to school sits in his portfolio, but obviously in terms of policy sits in the Education Minister's. But they are looking at it. Has been looked at before. There was a task and finish group. It's a little frustrating that we haven't had feedback from that, but it's an issue everywhere. It's not down to poor management, it's down to increased costs, it's increased demand, it's the change of demand that's there. So places, transport costs are expensive for one pupil sometimes. If they have a great need, then it's a lot more expensive than it used to be. But these are all things that we can begin to monitor with this new system, and as six local authorities hopefully be able to make some comparisons then, Chair, to see how well we compare with other local authorities as well. But I just wanted to say to Paul, it's in the early days, but we will see the benefits of that. And I'm not entirely sure about the figure as yet, but hopefully it's not going to be as significant as we see there, whilst we start to see the benefits of some of the changes that have been made. And as we go forward, as Charlie said, it takes time to embed some of these changes, but we should start to see some savings. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Julie. Last question, Councillor Gareth.
Yes, thank you. I won't go over the points that Paul's already eloquently put forward, but just to reiterate, it does seem like Groundhog Day this time of year, every year, when we come to talk about the school transport. I take your point, Amanda, on that, it's not our job to manage private businesses, national insurance and tax things, but I think it would be very naive of us not to try and get some sort of feel as to how much it's actually costing the domiciliary cares and the care homes and the fire service in the national insurance changes. Because I'm sure we've worked out what it's actually going to cost us as a council. So hopefully that will be covered by the government. But what we don't know is whether they will actually cover the domiciliary care, the care homes increases that they, unless they're making excess profits, are inevitably going to have to pass on to ourselves. And it would be really good, it's difficult, but it'd be really sensible to have a kind of figure and an idea in mind as to what additional costs are coming down the road. As far as home to school transport, just quickly, why isn't home to school transport actually managed by education? To my mind, it would make more sense and be easier to manage and possibly more efficient and effective if it was managed by that actual department. The health board, how much are we actually owed by the health board? And have we actually considered, symbolically, if you like, actually taking them to court, maybe a small claims court, just to actually focus their mind? And, we need to be a bit more robust with them because of the financial position that we're in. And finally, I'm really sorry to go on about this active travel, but that £2 million, when you were talking about rising interest rates, an extra £2.1 million worth of borrowing, actually we're saddling future generations with the repayments of that out of revenue for the next 20 years, I would guess. And in my back of a fag packet calculation, you know, that's a revenue cost of what, 175 to 200,000 pounds a year out of revenue that we're saddling everybody with for 20 years. I'm not saying it's not the right thing to do, but I just think we should really, really think carefully. And forgive me, Geraint, if I'm a little bit sceptical when you say that the actual costs are going to be exactly the same. This is neutral when we're actually building new bridges and putting new walkways and routes in from, for example, from Glanconwy to Junction. You know, there has to be maintenance costs. We have to maintain it. So, you know, again, I haven't seen any breakdowns of the costs of what we're paying at the moment, what we're going to be paying in the future, but we need to be really careful about these spending that we're actually doing now. And we need to consider it. I know the decision was made some time ago, but actually our financial position has got worse, and all the figures that I'm seeing, indicating figures that I'm seeing for our settlement for next year, you just look at the data, the census data and things, we are going to be disadvantaged compared with our neighbours in Gwynedd and Denbighshire. You know, everybody's going to get a bad settlement, but I've got a horrible feeling that ours could well be worse than even they get. And we've got to try and prepare ourselves for that. Sorry.
Thank you. I'm sure others may well have useful commentary on some of the points you've raised, but just to start with NI, yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, we're not being naive in believing that the care providers won't, I guess, be looking for the local authority to help with that, and equally, we are well, two things. I've sought to prepare an estimate for what I believe it might cost our care providers, and just for information, I provided that estimate along with the estimate of our direct costs that I believe we're going to provide to the WLJ, who are gathering that information nationally in order to lobby. I guess the problem that I have, I guess, is that, you know, we've had some assurance, for want of a better phrase, that public bodies will be refunded for their national insurance costs. I suspect we will get some refund, but it won't be 100% match, and I suspect we may well be caught short on that. What there isn't at the moment is any indication that we will be getting any funding for our care providers, and in fact, I think there are a number of bodies who are funded through local or funded through the public sector, but don't receive their money directly from government, who are falling into the Strathclyde Town and Community Councils, I believe, for instance, are not going to get any funding, as an example. So you know, I think there are a number of bodies where you know, I'm sure there's active lobbying going on by all sorts of people across the UK around those pressures that are being caused. So yeah, so we're not being naive, and I absolutely appreciate and accept that we will no doubt need to consider how we contribute towards that. I was just making that general point about that it's not you know, not for us to you know, to necessarily solve the 100% issue, because we ourselves won't be having the 100% solved for us either. So just on that, make that point. In terms of home to school transport and where it sits, I think there are different debates going on around that, and I'm sure different things are being considered. And I think ultimately, regardless of where it sits and whether it's sat in one department or two departments, it doesn't mean it can't work. I guess the key is about making sure that you've got appropriate systems and arrangements in place. But I know that's open to discussion, and Laurie or others might want to say something, I don't know. Equally, in terms of BCU, I don't know off the top of my head what our debt with BCU today is. What I would say, though, is the issue isn't so much around our current debt, i.e. that debt which we've come to an agreed funding arrangements with Betsy and we've billed for. I think that's being settled on a timely basis. There are one or two disputes here and there, but generally speaking, it's settled on a timely basis. We made great inroads into that a couple of years ago, where we had a lot of historic debt that we had with Betsy. We eventually got that settled. So that's not the issue. I think the issue is more around new arrangements where we are making an assessment and actually getting held to agree their contribution. I think that's the area that's more difficult. So as a way, it isn't debt that's been established, it's debt that we believe they should contribute. That may be that debate. Jenny may well want to comment about your suggestion. Otherwise, and yeah, I'll have to leave the last point to Geraint about the infrastructure.
Thanks, Amanda. Lowry's just going to come in now to answer that particular point. They're not
Diolch,
going
Geraint.
to Thanks, Lowry.
As in other local authorities, home to school transport straddles both Geraint's service area and my own as two heads of service. The eligibility and the delivery of the policy sits under the direct management of education services, and then the contract aspect sits under the direct management of ERF. Geraint and I are working really closely with our transport officer group to look at how we can refine and streamline processes moving forward, but it very much is a joined up approach in terms of delivering home to school transport, and that is mirrored across other local authorities regionally and nationally as well.
Thank you, Diolch, Lowry. Geraint, have you got those two responses? I think it was maintenance of, it was education first, and then homeschool transport, and then maintenance of the new structures. Thanks.
Yeah, I think Larry's just answered the homeschool transport. I would like to echo that the way in which we operate in Conway is not dissimilar to the way that the services are operated in other authorities, and there is good synergy within the transport element with public transport and transport providers. I'm not sure that there is any evidence whatsoever to suggest that, as was suggested, that it would be more efficient to wholly locate in one service or another. But happy for that discussion to happen. Moving on to the infrastructure, I accept that there will be increased costs of revenue costs of infrastructure where it is new infrastructure. However, the point that I was making was that the revenue cost of maintaining new infrastructure would be less than maintaining old infrastructure, particularly in the cases that we've got with the large coastal schemes, which I made reference to, where they are like expired. So there should be a reduction in those costs, and that's the point I was making.
Thank you, Geraint. I think the fact that there's going to be extra structures, I think that's where Gareth was going with that, not just old structures or existing ones, that there are new ones adding to our burden. So anyway, thank you for that. Councillor Charlie wanted to just pop in before I go to Councillor Anne online.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just think in response to the structures that we're planning to do, Gareth, I think it's really important to remember that that was a levelling up fund, which was chosen by the outgoing government. We submitted 3 projects, 2 which were more about economic regeneration. We had to submit one which was an active travel, but that was the UK government who selected that. The match fund requirement was, as you say, 10%. It leaves us in a very difficult situation if you then pull out of receiving £20 million and decide you don't want to do it. Moving forward, we need clarity about what grants we apply to. We have to show we're serious. But my frustration is that wasn't our choice. Across the whole of the UK, only 1 in 3 levelling up projects was successful. Very much a beauty parade. There were some authorities like Flintshire didn't get any at all. So whatever we have moving forward, it shouldn't be a beauty parade, and it should be a more local choice about what you actually want to support. The other projects would have been higher on my list personally because they had a revenue generating element to them, but it wasn't our decision. It was popular once at a UK level, and then it wasn't. And we're having to carry on with that. But I do think there'll be severe reputational damage to this council if you turn down £20 million of funding at this stage. But yeah, just to clarify that.
Yeah, I take your point, Charlie, and I understand exactly where you're coming from and the problems that we've got, but I'm just saying the position we're in at the moment, can we really afford to borrow that £2 million, or would we be better off borrowing it and putting it into other really needy areas and those ongoing costs that we've got to allocate to it? I'm just saying we need to think really carefully about it. Rather than, yes, it's been agreed ages ago, so we're just going to carry on ahead with it because it has implications for the next 20 odd years. And I understand the reputational bits and pieces, but just because we're being given something and offered something, if we can't afford to run it, then we'd have to do it.
So nobody's saying that we can't afford to run things moving forward. There will obviously be real benefits to tourism, health. Say it might not be the top of the list for me, but I think given that we're getting 80% match, I think it'll be bring a significant lot of advantage with it. The money, as I understand it, Amanda, was budgeted for a few years ago, and I know Geraint, you've said that you're looking at a variety of sources to make that up, so it won't be Conway's money per se. I don't know, Geraint, is it possible to touch on that? Because I know you mentioned at a meeting the other day.
Yeah, I fully expect the 10% has been catered with a capital programme that was that went through democracy. A high proportion of that, at least 50%, will not come out of the capital programme. We will hopefully be successful in having other partners who will contribute to that element of the works, thus reducing the total cost of that scheme.
Yeah, so from that, it looks as if we won't need to borrow the £2 million then, that we'll be borrowing significantly less than that, which, is important information. So thank you, Geraint.
And just to confirm, I guess as soon as we're in a position to have firmed that up, then obviously I can reflect that through into the programme. The only reason I haven't at the moment is because, Geraint and his team are working, hopefully very successfully in securing that. But until it has been secured, then it would be folly to suggest that we won't borrow when we might have to. So, but as soon as it is, we'll put it in.
Thanks, Amanda. Thank you very much. And last speaker, Councillor Anne online.
Chair, it's okay. I think my question's already been put and answered, so good to go.
Hey,
Thanks.
look at this timekeeping. Brilliant. Thank you, Councillor Anne. And yeah, I've just got just a quick comment really, Amanda. It's just looking, I know we're dealing with this quarter now, but looking forward, on the news this morning, it said that the new government has said that they will only look to limit the profits for our children looked after in England. And of course, that is going to clash again with the Welsh government to eliminate profits. So again, for the children that we do have to send to England, that's going to cause real problems, obviously, for our for our commissioning here in Wales. We're already seeing the problems, but it's not going to be a level playing field, is it? So that's something we've really got to concentrate on in the future. So, okay, thank you. That's all the questions. That's marvellous. Could I have the recommendations are on page 107. Could I have a proposer and a second of these, please? Okay, propose and second. Councillor Chris proposed, Councillor Hannah second. If everyone would like to show. And those against? Any abstentions? One abstention. Okay, so that's carried, members. Thank you very much. And thank you to all the officers that have taken part in this. Really grateful to you all. We now move on to item 11, an exempt item. Is there a proposer or a seconder to go into private session, please? Councillor Stephen. Thank you. And a seconder. Lovely. Okay. Just wait, but if everyone would like to show on that, please. Thank you. Okay, and if we just wait.
Oh, I just in order to come to the budget